So where does let's start with the big picture, okay? Now, what is the Maharishi effect? Maharishi effect is something that is very, very powerful. It influences soldiers on the battlefield. It's a highly robust effect. It's invisible. We really learned about it because of Maharishi's recognition that it was operating, but it's invisible. And so certainly to most people in the world, it's not something that's concrete and real. Now, David, OJ, and Fred, many years ago, demonstrated that that effect existed by showing that if they wire up a few people for EEG and put them next to a group that's doing the TN City program and the yogic flying, that the group program influences that group of people over there. So we know that this is not just some behavioral thing or magic thing. This is a physiological effect. But up until now, nobody has looked at the other physiological correlates of the Maharishi effect. And so we decided to, it's one of those Hail Mary moments, you might say. It's something that could work or it couldn't work, depending on, you know, 1,000 things. But what we did is we asked the scientific questions. Number one, does the Maharishi effect, does the group effect influence the level of gene expression, the deepest level of functioning of our physiology? Number one. Number two, we ask, okay, we can also look at the metabolome, all of the compounds in our blood, which really are a reflection of everything that's happening in the physiology. You know, how many of you have learned pulse diagnosis? So you know that it's ultimately that the blood and that whole system is coursing through every micrometer of our physiology. And when you take the pulse, it's sort of the summation of that. Well, measuring the metabolome is the biochemical equivalent of that. So both with the metabolome and with gene expression, we're playing a numbers game. In each case, we're actually looking at literally thousands of different compounds that might change. And those compounds relate to virtually every cell in the body. And so if there's an effect of the Maharishi effect on any cell, there should be some molecule that's going to change. And these techniques, they're called metabolomics and transcriptomics. Transcriptomics is looking at the level of the DNA, and metabolomics is looking at the level of these compounds in the blood. Omics is a signal or an indicator that you're looking at a massive number of things all at once. So it's a global sort of assessment that you're doing when you do an omic analysis. So basically we were saying the approach, the logic behind it is that, well, we know that the Maharishi effect is physiological, and we're looking at thousands of different molecules. And so the chances are we're going to see a few at least that are related, that actually change in response to the Maharishi effect. So it's a numbers game in that respect, that we're looking at many things, and the chances are we're going to see a few that change. Now, I can't tell you the outcome of the result of the experiments yet, because the samples are still in India waiting to be analyzed.
Hmm.
When we went there, I had hopes of bringing the samples back so that we could analyze them here in our very own lab. But I knew there might be some tricky things around that. And it turned out that the Indian government has a strict rule that you can't take blood or DNA out of India to analyze. And they consider it a national security issue. And in fact, it is a national security issue, because analyzing the genome of Indians, if that's done by your friends or by a physician, it's good. But if it's done by somebody who's looking for vulnerabilities in your population, you don't want that. And so they wanted to keep it, there's a logic for keeping it close. So we're going to be working, we've identified a lab to do the transcriptomics, and we're looking at 3 different labs to see which one is the best to do the metabolomics. But that'll be, that'll be something for a conversation a little later down the road. But we'll get to that as quickly as we can. But anyway, we did, now the question to Fred is, have you analyzed the EEG that we did in parallel?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I'm no further along than you.
Because you could,
I know.
yeah, I hope we get that those results soon.
Yeah, we could take the EEG out of India, but we have some issues with software and so on.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we did this analysis, and there were also some other tricky things. We normally, you do an ethics review of a research project before you do it. And I'd never done an ethics review for an Indian ethics committee before. It was a little bit more paperwork than what's involved here. Here it's 3 or 4 pages. There it was about that thick, like 30 pages to do the whole thing. But it was all part of the experience. And we now have the samples safely frozen away, ready to be analyzed. And it's really, it's a sort of a cliffhanger in a certain way, but we're really looking forward to seeing the results as they come out. So that's the story. Anything else you wanted me to cover?